Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. If you guys can hear me. All right, here we are. Okay, I think we're on now. All right, hi, everybody. It's me, Demetrius Villa from the High Speed Rail America Club, coming to you live from somewhere cold. I'm not going to tell you exactly where I am right now. It's a little bit of a secret I'm keeping for a little while long, but some people may know where I am, but hey, that's where it is. If you guys do know, all I can say is that I am out of Miami right now, and I did get work somewhere up in the Midwest. No, I'm not going to go to see the Super Bowl. I'm just moved up here for work. So hello, everybody. If you can hear me, here's Zach is in the chat also too as well. And in this episode for our live webcast, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be sticking mostly into, well, our country, America, and we're going to be talking about the infrastructure improvements that are going on here, because there is a lot going on right now, and just got off of Brightline also too. So it's been really great. That was an incredible experience on Amtrak. So, I mean, you guys can all see the video also too as well. We have it linked up. Probably I'll put it in the description below if I can. But apart from that also too, we are going to talk about what also happened with Amtrak today. Also, another accident has happened today, and of all things, it has to be, you know, the trains that I used to take over from Miami to New York to go visit my family up there, which is the Silver Star, the Silver Meteor service, and it crashed near in South Carolina, and there's about at least 100 people injured that have been hospitalized. So it's a really terrible accident, and just hoping, you know, the best for everybody there, and hopefully people do be able to recover as quickly as possible. So I will be taking comments also too as well, and questions. Hopefully, let me see. Well, I guess the video settings aren't too well over here. It is in a hotel, so hopefully things do get better here. So if you guys can't hear me that well, again, I apologize for the latency, and hopefully that will get fixed in future episodes. So it's step by step that we're all doing this. Let me go ahead and put this also too on Facebook, so we can go live on Facebook as well. Okay, and do feel free to put in your questions also too as well, and I'll be able to answer them, and we can be able to talk about what's going on and what are my thoughts also too on Brightline as well. So let me put this right now on Facebook, so we're going to be able to see that. Put that there, and I will be putting in the description. Okay, Mohammed Qureshi is also here. Hello, how you doing? Okay, hi, everybody's here. Okay, Steve, Games and Trains, and NF. Okay, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them out there also too as well. For now, I'm going to be talking about what my experience was on Brightline, and again, let me link that in the description below so you can be able to see. And I believe if I go ahead and put in Brightline on YouTube search, the first video up there, so it's been doing pretty well also too. We have 19,250 views as of 2:05 p.m. on February 4th. So we are doing pretty well with this video, and people are knowing pretty much what's the future here for high-speed rail. So I'm going to put the link right here in the description below. So if you guys have not seen it yet, you can go ahead and see it now. And I'm going to also put it in the comments as well. All right, Zachary Gastella, hello. This is my first time watching the live show on this channel. Well, welcome aboard, and hope you have a great time over here and enjoy the ride. Okay, so Prabhanjan from India. My question is about the safety and what we as a group can do about it. Well, here in the United States, we have two main factors right now for safety that's going on. That's number one is PTC, which is positive train control, which is something we really need to really go ahead on and bring down more in the United States. The second one is also grade crossings and making sure people do not get in front of a train. I'm pretty sure that's a bad word of advice for people to go in front of a train, and I'm guessing not too many people still here in the United States don't really know about not to get in front of a train. So I would say the first thing we can really do right now, and I am doing something for this month to start for going into the safety for high-speed rail as we start moving the group further, and later on we are going to rebrand also too as well. I'm not going to say exactly what we're going to rebrand into. We're still going to be trains. We're still going to be heavily high-speed rail, but where we're going to go into there is going to be, I would say, a lot more involved into the community process and into the political process and advocacy of bringing high-speed rail and transit and metro transit also too as a reality when it comes to rail in the United States. So PTC, let me start with PTC, positive train control, which as they have already in other countries, which will automatically stop the train if it's getting too close to another train or if it's going way too fast into a corner. The system will automatically kick in and slow down the train, pretty similar to what we have, you know, the auto drive and autopilot functions that we have in Tesla automobiles right now. I mean, that's, I guess, the quickest way you can pretty much tell normal people who don't really know too much about trains. But it's already been around for decades already in Japan as automatic train control, ATC, and also in Europe too as well. So this is something that hasn't caught up so well in the United States, and the legislation, and a lot of this has to do with the FRA also too as well, because they have not been pushing this as much as they should have before, and they kept pushing back the dates. It would say, oh, we're gonna have it by 2015, and you know, most of the freight railroads were saying, oh, we gotta push it back, we can't put it in now. Okay, fine, we'll push it back to 2017, and now we're pushing it back to 2018, now we're pushing it back to 2019. So by the time that we even get PTC, I mean, it's more lives that are being done, and you know, God forbid, I mean, you know, more people are gonna, you know, get hurt from this. And I would say right now, one of the other accidents that happened was with the Republican congressmen who were going to the retreat from D.C. into West Virginia, and they had that, you know, that crash into a dump truck in Virginia near Charlottesville. So that, I think, may have woken up a lot of the congressmen as well, that this is something that really does need to get solved. This is not an issue that we can, you know, it's a 10-year plan or something like that for infrastructure. No, this is something that needs to be done 5 years ago. This is something that we needed now in high-speed rail and rail in the United States, especially now that we're having more and more people using rail. Amtrak is having, they had their best year last year. I believe like 32 million people they were able to transport across the United States, which compared to other countries, it's paltry, but in the United States, modern rail with Amtrak, well, modern, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, I mean, that number is going to keep going up as the economy continues to do better, as infrastructure continues to get better, especially in this current administration. Yes, I know some of you guys don't like hearing that, especially a couple of members on the Facebook group. And let me just one caveat over here, just let me go off tangent for a little bit. I am hearing you guys. I know there's some members on the High Speed Rail America Club group on Facebook that are complaining that there's the same 5 people of a certain political background that are kind of taking over the conversation, and you know, sort of repeating the same thing also too as well. It's not going to last for that much longer. And I do hear your cries, and I do hear them also too as well, which I understand why you don't really want to be involved so much in the Facebook group if you constantly have somebody doing the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, it gets annoying, and you don't really want to be on the group, which is why you've come over here to YouTube to voice your concerns. And I do hear you, so we're gonna change that sooner or later. But when it comes to infrastructure right now in the United States, it is getting better. And we are seeing that right now, especially with Brightline, which was a fantastic ride also too. Again, we have the video in the comments below. So it's something that's going to really start changing now. And once we have more people now knowing about it, PTC is something that's going to come now, I think now sooner rather than later. But we do have to get on that. And I think as a group, what we can do is start pushing that and, you know, saying the safety costs. And I will be putting out a video maybe sometime in the next month or so, or either late February or March, what I have in the timeline here, I think, for PTC, we're going to be putting out for that, and also for Operation Lifesaver is another group that's working on getting people to make sure they don't walk across the train tracks, especially when the gates go down. That's something we've had a problem in Florida. We know Florida is known as Florida, which is a sad thing. Everybody gets a nice little name, like Indiana gets get to be known as Indy, and then Florida gets to be known as Florida. Yeah, not too nice, but that's the thing of South Florida. So I mean, people need to know: do not cross the tracks. There's no other way you can stress it. If you don't walk across a highway, and the DOT, the Department of Transportation, is not responsible for people going across a interstate highway, why should a railway, especially one known as Brightline, which has been involved with Operation Lifesaver, which does have that, why should they be responsible when they have done their community due process in order to make sure and say, in a court of law, say, hey, we put up turn signals, we put up the signals at the crossing, we've been involved with this organization, and we've been putting out ads in the radio, newspaper, and in the TV. There's no reason why people should be going over a train track because of our due diligence. We did our due diligence. So basically, in a court of law, Brightline should be able to go free. There's no doubt about that. So that's when it comes to safety, and we will be involved with that also too, to make sure most of this doesn't happen again. I think now people are starting to understand not to get in front of a train track in South Florida as they begin to learn how to walk on two legs. So that's something that's coming in. Let me take the next question also too. From Mohammed Qureshi, considering what you have seen from Brightline, what station improvements can Amtrak make at a station in anticipation for hopeful future track and rolling stock improvements? Let's start with number one. Maybe not have a 40-year anniversary poster hanging down from the sign when it's your 45th year anniversary. that's number one. No, but really, Amtrak really needs to start modernizing their stations, and it doesn't take that much to modernize it. You don't have to go and start, deconstructing everything, demolish a whole bunch of stations, start going down. Simple things like adding kiosks in there, adding panels to have live tracking of the trains also too as well, and where those are going to go. That doesn't really take that much investment in order to install in there. I mean, it's really just a couple of computers, some internet, some LCD screens. You install those panels in there and you put them up. It's not a big deal. So that's really one very easy way to start modernizing and putting in a system to modernize train travel here in the United States. I know in some bigger stations, like I know Penn Station, they just recently got rid of the old little flapboard that they had, the little flipboard that they had over in Penn Station, which has been there for, I think, like since the 70s. So they already installed it into an electronic ticker board, which, maybe in bigger stations, that's going to be something that's going to be needed. Just small changes like that are simple, relatively inexpensive investments to put in for a large station, especially if a company that does have access to a lot of funds. I know it's a little bit harder because Amtrak is technically a government company, so that's the problem when you have a government company. It's going to take a lot longer for things to get done. And of course, you have unions, which Amtrak is 80% unionized. So when things get done, they rarely do get done. But that's something that can be done for Amtrak. Really, in reality, the thing that needs to start happening is just as Brightline hasn't done it. I think this is the second question that Mohammed put out there. What incentives are being made to the private sector to attract them to invest in projects like Brightline in other states? So really, the big thing where I think is going to come from this entire infrastructure bill that the Trump administration is pushing is the big thing that's been needed right now in the United States, which is allowing for investment to come in from the private sector into the infrastructure sector. Now, in the United States, it's different. It's not Europe. Oh, we can't just throw money at the problem and, it gets solved. It doesn't work like that in the United States. Every country and every, people are different. People are different and depending on different places. So in Europe, it's, it's more, I would say, socialized in that sense, with the European Union in order to, put in money from the different countries and pull it in there for infrastructure. And you also have the different countries that can also do that as well. That's something that, Europe can do. And of course, their demographics are different and their cities are laid out in a different fashion. The United States, not so much, apart from maybe the Northeast corridor, which is modeled a little bit more onto European cities rather than, I would say, American cities, which are more spaced apart and more in blocks instead of concentric circles of how the cities were made. So, and the politics are different in the United States as well. I know a lot of people, think that live in the big cities that say, oh, why can't we just, spend money on that? Because you have a lot of people that don't live in the big cities, which is a big majority of America, that don't really want to spend the money into that. And that's, that happens all around the country, where you have states that want to spend a lot of money on infrastructure projects within their cities, but outside of the cities in the same state, these other people don't want it. It's like, why do we have to pay for, City A capital to go ahead and build a whole bunch of, new railroads for them? Why do we have to pay for that? Or for a new stadium, which more or less it just happens to be a new stadium that a lot of these cities are building, which doesn't really help in the infrastructure realm, because most cities will prioritize building stadiums, then infrastructure later. And by the time people want to get building infrastructure, they don't really want to do it because they saw the stadium was a big waste of money. Miami. Okay, but anyway, that's really the big thing which I see in this infrastructure bill, is allowing private investment. The United States works, and it has worked objectively. This is not an opinion or anything like that. Objectively, the United States was able to build railways unlike the world has ever seen, because the government said, okay, you want to get this land, we're going to give it for you at a discount, do what you want with it, build some cities and towns here, and it's all good. So private investment flooded into the West, and that's why America is the way it is because the government, stepped out of the way, gave the incentives, allowed an environment for private companies to prosper in order to build these railways, and in order to do that, and it sort of leveled it out. Of course, back in the days, in the late 19th century and early 20th century, it was far more, I would say, imbalanced towards railways, because that was the big way of traveling in that day. Then afterwards, when it came to the plane, the government just went from one end of the pendulum to the other end of the pendulum, and that's where we have the problem now. Instead, it needs to be right in the middle, giving, I would say, the same incentives, giving a level playing field to everybody. Stop giving incentives to airlines, stop giving incentives to roadways, and also start cutting incentives for railroads, because once everybody's cut off, it's pretty much on their own. Now that's not going to happen like that. It's not going to be open season for all companies and all ways of infrastructure to go through, because that's completely crazy. But in that sense, going down slowly by step by step, and balancing out the imbalances that we already have in our current infrastructure policy of being so biased towards building roads and airports. That's something that we'll be able to change, and that's what we're seeing right now is an open investment to say, hey, if you want to build high-speed railways. Oh, by the way, the biggest thing is deregulation also too, which the Trump administration has been big on. Which now, instead of taking years and years and years to just get one thing done, to build like one building, it's not going to take that much longer anymore. And you don't have to buy as many lobbyists and start getting in so many lawyers in order to start pushing the process forward, because that takes a long time in order to get a project forward. Like something like Brightline actually probably would have been done all the way to Orlando if it wasn't for the whole entire approval process and the EPA studies, which take years to do. For little to no good reason. Just now, TCR, I think in the last couple of months, I think in December actually, completed their EPA study. That was going on for 3 years. So I mean, how much do you have to know that it's environmentally positive to have a train, an electric train, rather than a whole highway? I mean, how long does it take for people to figure that out and to spend millions of taxpayer money to do that? Well, TCR actually paid out of their own coffers to do that, and so did Brightline. But when a whole lot of other government projects do this, they pay out of taxpayer money, and of course it takes longer. So it's pretty hard to do, and that's something that we really need to get on. I see Mike BTKO. Hello, fun. Hi from Italy. Hi from Italia, which is most of where my family is from. Okay, NF, did you see any renderings of the TCR station in Dallas? Any thoughts on TCR in 2018? I did see some of the renderings of the stations also too as well. I think they're pretty set if they keep following the same layout, maybe a little bit more towards Brightline. If they follow that layout of having a more a station where there's a lot more investment and a lot more transit-oriented development, to have real estate and to have stores also too as well, and to, have stuff like hotels and stuff like that. That's something that's going to make it a much more lucrative location and allow people to say, hey, why don't we just spend some time over there or go over on the train. Just get a drink of tea here. Cheers. But I think that's something that TCR will be able to do well, especially with investment from the Japanese companies. They don't mess around. And if you guys have ever been to Japan, if you ever seen Tokyo also too as well, or any of the big cities in Japan, those stations are completely massive. They're massive and they have a lot going on, and a lot of people also too as well. Especially in the Tokyo area, they go to a lot of the stations like the Shinjuku station is pretty much a mall. It's the biggest station in the world, and so many people go to that station. I mean, it's actually the most populous station also too, where most people go through. So, I mean, there's a lot you can do in the station without even going to the train. So that's the big thing of inviting transit-oriented development, and somewhere like how Denver did it also too as well with their Union Station is incredible. So that needs to continue, and TCR I think is going to be even bigger than Brightline once it starts doing. Brightline is what's got the start going. And without Brightline, you wouldn't have anything else. But TCR is really going to start bringing in what more high-speed rail can really look like in the United States. And if that project, when that project, because it's not if now, it's when that project is actually completed and goes through, which it will be completed before California. There's no doubt about that. And it has a lot easier topography to go over, and two bigger cities in order to get through. It's not going to Bakersfield or to the Central Valley or anything like that, which they're pretty big places in California, but they're nowhere near what Dallas and Houston are. So these are two growing megalopolises in the United States, and connecting those two with high-speed rail and Japanese-style high-speed rail, that's really going to take us to the next level. Butter Shark, have you ever heard of Cascadia HSR? I believe that's a group that's working on bringing in high-speed rail between Washington State and Oregon and over to Vancouver. I haven't heard that much updates on it, but I think that's definitely also an area where high-speed rail can go. I think those corridors, when it comes to, let's say, the South Florida to Central Florida corridor, Texas, the Texas Triangle, the Northeast, the Midwest between Chicago over to to Pittsburgh and that area, and over those areas, and California also as well, and the Cascadian areas. Those are areas that are really going to need high-speed rail first. So again, I believe I made this point apparent before. It's not about connecting across the United States with high-speed rail as fast as it could. It's connecting first regions within regions together. Connecting those within those to high-speed rail, and then connecting other regions between each other to high-speed rail. So, let's say that once the South gets their own high-speed rail region, is then connecting the South to the Mid-Atlantic and the Mid-Atlantic to the Northeast. And once they get their high-speed rail going, that's how it really works. And that's how it worked before in the United States and in other places also too, is once you get those big regions to create their rail connections within their cities and to other cities, is when you start seeing other connections to other cities and to other regions. So that's what we're really working on. Let me see. Mohammed Qureshi, in Hong Kong, rail stations are built as mixed developments. Housing offers retail, small spaces. Yep, that's exactly how it really is. Did you see Brightline doing the same? And if you did, so what kind of retail is coming in? So the retail that they have, and what I saw was the Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach stations, which are the smaller of the stations also too as well. And they did have, some mixed development. The West Palm Beach station actually has a whole apartment complex right next to it, and they're starting to lease in, I think they're starting leasing right now or in about a month or so. So that's really good to have. As in within the West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale stations, since they're smaller stations, you're not going to see that much development. They do have the little restaurant and cafe, and they do have, the sundry shop and the souvenir shop. And that's pretty much it, which is still a lot more than what Amtrak has, and is definitely a much cleaner presentation than what Amtrak is ever going to pull off. Amtrak can never get to that level because, of course, as a government company, they're never going to do that. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of it. It's never going to be like that, and that's the way it is. But Brightline, their biggest mixed development station is going to be Miami, and the Miami station is going to be absolutely massive. They're still in construction. They're almost done with that, actually. That's going to have a whole mall in it also, too. And they're building, I believe, the tallest building in downtown Miami, which is going to be a whole super hotel that they're going to have over there. And, of course, I think the apartments and the office use space also, too, as well, because it's like there's 3 different levels that they're going to have. They're going to have like one building here, and there's a small little building here, and then across on the 3rd level is going to be where the trains are going. So it's a pretty unique looking station, and it's pretty cool looking also too as well with the use of space, not just having, you know, all the trains go in a grade and, you know, nothing else above it. It's going to have the trains above grade, 3 floors above sea level, and it's going to have, you know, the trains going above, and people can go in or go use the metro mover and, you know, go inside and have a, you know, into the restaurants or go shopping. So there's going to be a lot that's going to be in that station. Hopefully I'll be able to go and visit, to go and see it when they do open up. That's going to be cool. All right, let me see what else is over here. Let me see. Yeah, there is a lot of lag. I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully we'll get that fixed up. Let me see what other question we can take here. Let me see. If you do something over here in St. Pete, we are a mess. Oh, yeah, St. Petersburg. That's hopefully, you know, Florida. Once Brightline starts going, the rest of Florida will start wanting to have connection to that and, you know, high-speed rail. Okay, Mike BTK. Oh, I'm so proud of California, Texas. I think you put Texas in 2 times, but hey, not too big for Texas, right? You gotta have 2 Texas. North Carolina, Florida for getting high-speed rail underway. That's pretty good. Did you hear about the Amtrak accident right now for freight trade? Yes. We were just talking about that in the beginning, which is it's not good for Amtrak also too as well, and it's not good for rail because Amtrak is kind of dragging down everybody else in this as well, because Amtrak is pretty much the only way to get around the country with rail. And once people see, oh, Amtrak is crashing every so often, which, you know, there's always car accidents and there's always, you know, crime happening in cities. But the news likes to focus on, you know, things when they don't happen as often, like crime in smaller towns. When, you know, a town that barely has any crime, all of a sudden, oh, there's one serial killer going around, and, you know, oh, that's tremendous news. Or, you know, when you have an Amtrak accident, when, you know, outside your window there's like 5 car accidents, and, you know, nobody's talking anything about that. So it's not good for Amtrak. And to have, I think it's like 3 now within the last month or 2 that it's been having, in Washington, in Virginia, and in North Carolina. It's not good for Amtrak, and it's not good for rail in general if this keeps happening. Of course, this is, you know, things that could have been solved with PTC, and people stop crossing the railroad when there's a train going through. How many times we have to keep saying that? Unbelievable. That's when most of the accidents happen, especially when you have a dump truck or, you know, some 18-wheeler that says, yeah, I think I can beat this. I can beat that train. Yeah, I go, and that's what happens. Because, I mean, there's no way you can beat a train. So, I mean, hopefully, let me see. Any accidents, train wrecks? Remember, we have a fight ahead of us, predicted an Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, that was a pretty heavy book. I don't think we're going to be having any John Galt lines anytime soon, but with, you know, some different kind of metal. I forgot what they called it in the book. But, yeah, that's also an inspiration for building private railroads. But, you know, it's where it's going. Can't go wrong with maglev rail. Yeah, well, the thing is, it's expensive. So you can only go wrong with your pocketbook and with the pocketbook of the country. When will high-speed rail line from downtown Dallas to downtown Austin, Texas? Austin, Texas, I don't know. So that's all part of the Texas Triangle that they're building into connecting Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin together through high-speed rail. When that happens, it's only a matter of time after Texas Central Railway is ordered to do that between Dallas and Houston. And once that line is successful, they'll eventually go and branch out, as we've already did our interview also too with Judge Robert Eccles, who is the president of Texas Central Railway, that he said that, of course, that they have plans in the future for expansion. So that's something we want to go through. Any indication that the president is aware of Brightline? I guess you mean the president of the United States. I would say that I'm sure for sure the Department of Transportation is aware of it. I know some people who were there on Brightline from the Department of Transportation with what's the name of the secretary's name who's married to Mitch McConnell? I just forgot her name right now. Let me just look it up. Transportation Secretary. It's a good thing about having a computer right here. Elaine Chao. There we go. Elaine Chao. Definitely she knows about it also too as well. However, I mean it's become more of a private thing in order to do that. So it's not really in their department in order to do that. It's their department to facilitate the rules and regulations for rail and also the FRA. But I would say the president is much more aware, I think, what's going on in Texas. And that was also in the infrastructure plan of the top 50 infrastructure projects for the United States. I believe Texas Central Railway was either 11 or 12. So it was pretty high up on the list. And there was, I think it was 1/5 of the list. So I would say 20% of the list was rail. So it's a big thing. The administration knows that rail needs to be brought up into the United States, and it does need to be modernized. And President Trump repeats it over and over again to rebuild our roadways, our bridges, our railways, our airports, our tunnels and bridges and all that, and to build with American steel and American grit. And that's a statement that nobody cannot agree with. I don't know why people have a problem with that. I know people, once you're partisan on one way, you don't care if by any chance Trump were to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden, we're all connected with maglev for free. People will still complain about that. They'll find something to complain about. Which, I mean, I don't care honestly who did it, if it was President Obama or President Trump. And I agreed with President Obama also too that we needed to build high-speed rail. However, the way that he did it, and just sprinkling money here and there, it didn't work too well, and he made it more of a political, a political maelstrom, when a lot of governors didn't want to, accept the money because it was becoming more of a thing between you versus me, and we can't be having that you versus me mentality here in the United States. Which, I mean, I could say it, but I know it's not going to happen. But when it comes to infrastructure, and I know the news also says this also too, is that infrastructure is pretty much the only thing that Republicans and Democrats can agree on across the aisle. It's just that when it becomes hyper partisan like this, it's not going to get done. And I know there's some people in the group that would rather not see high-speed rail done if it's done under Trump, and that's a pretty sad thing. I don't care if the high-speed rail was done under Obama or Trump. The country needs it, and that's what we need to put first. America comes first when it comes to infrastructure, so it needs to happen. Okay. I live in Puerto Rico. This is from Mike BTKO. We used to have a train my people here needed. Puerto Rico is becoming a logistical transportation. Reddit, like, yeah, I know. Puerto Rico is not a good state right now, and also with Hurricane Maria, it's still reeling from the damage from there. Puerto Rico in itself, just as the territory, isn't doing too well, and there's a lot of corruption, rampant crime also too. Believe me, when you're in South Florida and Miami, you definitely know a lot what's going on in Puerto Rico, and it's pretty sad to see. And I mean, I personally, I don't think that really there's not much the United States can do. If we throw a whole bunch of money in there, a lot of the politicians in Puerto Rico will just steal the money, or it won't go to the right places. So that's the unfortunate sad part, I think, about Puerto Rico. But I mean, I don't think they're gonna really have rail too much in the future. That's the sad part, but I'm sorry. That's the sort of the reality. NF, do you think public opinion on Brightline has changed in the wake of pedestrians getting hit? Yes and no. And here's the reasons why. If you were for Brightline in the beginning, you're still gonna support Brightline. You're gonna say, well, these people going over across the rail lines, how stupid could they be, and something like that. And if you were against Brightline, you're looking at this and saying, oh, well, you see, I told you so. I told you it was going to be dangerous. The train's going to come off the tracks and start hunting people down. Look at this. We were right all along. Ah! And you have the people in the middle that are saying, it's a train. People shouldn't be crossing across when it's a train. Hey, Brightline, I never heard of that. It's Brightline. So, really, I mean, it's news. It's not really good news, but it's letting people know, hey, we have a faster train now. And some people are not too smart enough to know that they shouldn't be crossing the line when there's a faster train going through. So, I mean, it's not doing good for Brightline in a sense, and for train safety, especially with all the train safety accidents we're having. But for Brightline itself, I would say it's just news, and it's not really doing good or bad for it. So that's what I'm saying. That's from what I've seen also too as well, and talking to people, and I'll say a lot of people when I talk to South Florida, oh, they should be doing something more about the safety. I mean, how much more do you need to do about safety? Look both ways before you cross the street. I mean, come on, guys, that's Sesame Street level safety. It's then again, it's South Florida. Oh man. Okay. Let me see. Any more questions we got here? Robert Halliburton, when will we see high-speed rail line from downtown Dallas to downtown Galveston, Texas? I think I answered part of the question from Austin. Again, there has to be first between Dallas to Houston before we can see anywhere else in Texas. So I don't know when that will happen in the next 10 or 20 years. That's up to Texas, and that's up to TCR. How much different are the Brightline train locomotives and the Amtrak City Sprinters, as they're both based on the Eurosprinter, if I'm not mistaken? That's correct, but the Eurosprinter is electric, and what we have here in the United States is the Siemens Charger, which is an electric diesel motor engine, which is a Cummins diesel QSK 95, which produces 4,000 horsepower and is EPA Tier 4 rated. So it's a very clean, very powerful engine also too as well. Excuse me, very smooth also too when it comes to acceleration, because we barely felt it. It just glides and it just goes through. So that's the only difference. Number one is the engine and the motive power, and number two, the Brightline engine is a lot more streamlined as well. If you see the front of it has a cone in the front to make it a lot more aerodynamic, and what we get for Amtrak is not going to be like that, and they're going to have the couplings over in front, because Amtrak is a lot more frequent, and if they need to couple the trains together with more capacity, they can be able to do that. Brightline is working on higher frequency and fixed capacity trains, which they're sticking on right now for 6 passenger cars for the first phase between Miami and West Palm Beach, and then expanding over to 7 cars on their modular system between Miami and Orlando. So that's the system that they're working on. Are there any functioning high-speed rail lines between Acela and Brightline? That's from David Connolly. As in fully functioning high-speed rail, as in Japanese and European-style high-speed rail? No, we don't have that yet. We're going on the first step of it, which Brightline is now the first higher-speed rail service, and they're not even going to higher-speed rail speed numbers yet. They're going at a max of 80 miles an hour between West Palm Beach and Miami. So that's something we have to see later on once they get to 125 miles an hour between Cocoa and Orlando. So I mean, we don't have that yet, and Acela runs at an average speed of about 60 miles an hour, actually I think less, and only reaches 150 miles an hour for 10 miles. Where was it, in Massachusetts, or it's somewhere up above New York? So not even between DC and New York does it even go 150 miles an hour. It just doesn't reach that fast. So even Brightline has a higher top speed, because not higher average speed, because it's able to accelerate far more quickly, and it's running on its own pretty much its own trackage, and doesn't have to worry about anything else like other trains also too as well, or not that much freight, because Florida East Coast already plans ahead and says, okay, we're having freight on this end of the section of the track, and we're having Brightline on this section. So it's a lot easier for Brightline to be a lot more consistent in speed. Okay. Let me see. Growing Up 15 says, a North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia joint effort high-speed rail line that connects to Jacksonville and Brightline connections from Orlando to Jacksonville. Great idea or no? I think it's a great idea, and it's something that once I think Brightline starts connecting forward and more into Florida, they do have Jacksonville as a far future expansion also too, as part of I think that's part of what they call phase 4, because phase 3 is phase 2 is to Orlando, and then phase 3 is going to be to Tampa, and then they're going to have up to Jacksonville, maybe a stop in somewhere in Daytona in between the two, which would be nice. And then afterwards, once Georgia, North Carolina, and the rest of the South get their rail lines together, you can see connections happening through, and joint efforts between different rail lines going back and forth between the lines. That's something that we can see with track sharing. It's definitely something. Any plans in Chicago, from Roy Steinberg? I believe there is a group called Midwest HSR. I'm gonna actually look more into that and see if there's any plan. I do know that they did upgrade the tracks between there and Milwaukee also too as well for the Hiawatha between the two cities, which is actually one of Amtrak's also more frequented services, because you have a lot of people going in from the airport between O'Hare and wherever it is up in I think it's Milwaukee, yeah. But that's that's something that's been going on, is the track upgrades to allow Amtrak to go at a top speed of 110 miles an hour. As for real high speed rail, nothing much for right now. Jan Gorski, what do you think of the Northeast Corridor in Acela and the future of the Northeast Coast? Northeast Coast is by far and large our most important corridor in the United States. There's no doubt about that. And the reason why is because, number one, you have the population density that will allow for high-speed rail. Number two, you already have the tracks setting already there that's separated between away from freight railroad, and you have already passenger rail. However, Amtrak is running it, and the thing is that that track, is a lot of it, needs to be absolutely upgraded, because you have bridges like the Susquehanna Bridge, which are from older than 100 years old, between Maryland and the Hard to Gross, and it's like the whole thing's almost falling apart, and you have tunnels that are from the 1860s. I think the Baltimore Tunnel is that old, and they can't even take higher trackage, and you can't even go past 10 miles an hour in there, because you start crumbling down the whole thing. So really, the Northeast Corridor is what's really going to need a lot more investment, and that's really the place where it's going to get probably the direct government investment that's going to be needed also too as well, and it has been with the current project right now between New Jersey and New York for the Gateway project, and that's going to be something that's going to be mostly state. Now that's another thing, guys. It's not mostly going to be federal funding. This is going to be something that's going to be between private funding and state funding. So federal funding, you won't see that much. You're going to see much more state funding with it, because number one, it's a lot more localized. Number two, you have a lot of people that say, why do we have to pay, if you live somewhere in Montana, why does Montana on federal taxpayer dollars have to pay for California's project? Even though California's project will be a benefit to California and that area, it's not fair for people in Montana who don't really use rail or don't want to use rail in a more sparsely populated area to say, why do we have to pay for that? So it really falls more onto states and private companies in order to do the funding. Don't expect too much federal funding, and when federal funding does come through, it's usually a lot later than it needs to be, and not too much. And I know some people were complaining, why are they cutting federal funding away from the Gateway project in the Northeast Corridor? Number one, it was never agreed upon that the federal government was set in stone to fund for that. Number two, New Jersey and New York, they do got a lot of rich people over there. They do got a lot of taxes as well. And as they say, maybe they can share the wealth. That's their states. They want to do that, and they can do that. I know it does help that the Northeast Corridor in full is able to have that part of the Gateway project between New York and New Jersey. I think the refrigerator's trying to say something. To be having that a lot more smooth or a lot more streamlined. However, these are projects that are mostly New Jersey, New York, and a lot of commuters from New Jersey and New York use this. By far and large, I think 90% of the user share is between New Jersey and New York. So it's something that they need to pay for, and if they need to do it, they'll do it. That's why it's easier for states to do it, because they know they have to do this. They know they have to for their constituents. It's a lot more localized, which makes it a lot easier. That's the good thing. My feed lags. It's lagging. I know it's lagging. I'm on hotel internet. Once I get settled down over here, I'm gonna get some really wicked high-speed rail internet. I'm gonna get a really good router also too as well. I'm thinking either Asus or Netgear, maybe like a Nighthawk or an RLG router in order to put the settings a lot better, because I do use a lot of storage and network bandwidth, so that's something that's gonna help. So hopefully once we get settled down and we start having more of these, we're going to have a better camera also too as well. I'm going to have an actual camera to have better quality video. Well, the mic is pretty good. At least you guys can hear me pretty well on the mic. It's a Blue Yeti mic, as you can see. So I'm not going to take it now, actually. I'll just leave it here. leave it right here. I'm not going to spill anything. But it's a good mic, and I used it for most of the videos. I think the mic is set and good. That's been a good investment, and it's lasted a good number of years. It's actually went well in the plane also too as well, and got knocked around by the TSA, still going through. So Blue makes some pretty good mics if you guys want to do video editing, voice recording. That's also good. We're heading towards the 45-minute mark. I'm going to answer one more question if anybody has. Let me see. Liam Allen Cheryl. I believe that's how you pronounce your name. By the way, guys, if I butcher the pronunciation of your names, I'm sorry, but that's a thing. Actually, we'll do two more questions because I see there's actually a pretty interesting question here. Is there supposed to be a high-speed rail line between Vancouver to Seattle to Portland? Yes, that's the one that actually crashed. That's the Cascades one with the Talgo tilting trains. It's not really high-speed rail, but it's more higher speed rail, and yeah, I believe that's what you have between those areas there. Whether they start putting in PTC into the line or start hiring better engineers to drive the trains. That's another thing. Amtrak doesn't. It's getting known that Amtrak, even though as much money as you spend on it, or as much money you don't spend on it, they're not really doing as good as a job as most people would think that a rail company would be doing in regards to safety. They're not going to be like either the Japanese or the Germans who are constantly getting trained and have high-tech simulators and have a whole book of everything and all these these electronic aids in order to help them. It's not like that on Amtrak. They don't, and especially with a unionized company. Well, American unions are different from other unions. American unions, they have different priorities rather than most unions, and it hasn't worked well. And we're getting to see that because union participation in the United States is at an all-time low, and it's just continuing to go lower. So hopefully the next phase of decentralizing unions right now in the United States will go into the federal government, which... Oh wait, I said unions in the federal government. Never mind, that's never going to happen, and it's another reason why we need privatized and state-funded railways. Well, more private-funded railways, because what you have with Amtrak is also state funding for Amtrak also too as well. But I mean, guys, this is not my opinion. This is something that's objective that is needed for the United States, because you can case, but we need to put in more money for we need to nationalize the railways. We have a nationalized railway. It's called Amtrak. It hasn't worked too well, if anybody has noticed. I mean, it's not me saying that. It's not like politically or anything to do with libertarianism. It just doesn't work, period. So that's the whole thing. Let me see. I guess one more question we're going to take. Why not? Two more questions. How about the possibility of connecting to the Silk Road of China and the United States? That's not going to happen. The Silk Road is mostly towards connecting China over to Europe and through Russia also too as well, which is a massive project. And knowing China, they'll probably do a lot of it until they run out of money and another rail commissioner gets beheaded or something like that, because that's the way China is. But I mean, I don't know in that sense, because right now the Chinese railway company, CRC or whatever it is, whatever it's called, they're already in debt as it is, because they just built and built. And they are getting a lot of people to get on those rail lines. However, the speed at which they built these high-speed rail lines, and at the cost and cutting corners and safety regulations that they just massively imposed after that terrible accident, really dug into the depth of the country. And that's the thing. China also too economically isn't going to be in such a great situation within the next 10 years. So that's something with China. Usually every 100 or so years, there's always an implosion. That's just Chinese history. If you guys know Chinese history, I mean, there's over 40 dynasties in over 4,000 years. It happens. That's what China is. I think in the 20th century, you had 3 different rulers and 3 different political methods also too as well. It went from a monarchy to a democracy to a civil war to a communist dictatorship, and then you have Taiwan also too on the other end, which still claims that they're China, And well, now recently they're saying, you know what, forget you, no more two countries, one China policy. We're not doing that anymore. We're just Taiwan. Screw you guys. So that's, you know, that's something that's going to happen. Really, the next flashpoint of when it comes to world politics is going to be in Asia. Are you excited for this? Is going to be the last. Actually, let me just look through here if there's any other last questions I want to take. Well, let me just. I want to thank you, Mohammed Qureshi. Thanks, Demetrius, for answering my questions, and thanks for doing these talks. You are a true patriot. Thank you, you too, as well, and thank you for supporting the High Speed Rail America Club and being a great American in general. Let me see. Last question I'm going to take here. Are you excited about the Avalia Liberty and the $2.45 billion government funding from the Obama administration for the Northeast Corridor? Again, that's not... the amount of money that the Northeast Corridor needs for investment is a lot more than that. They're going to need at least $50 billion, or at least in a sense to be having these projects split up and, you know, being funded between a mixture of private funding, whether private companies take over some operations of Amtrak or do some track sharing programs of Amtrak and, you know, pay up some of the costs there. Or you have the states also funding their portions of the track also too as well. $2.5 billion is a drop in the bucket to what the Northeast Corridor needs. It's a little bit, and it's there. But, I mean, just for the Avalia Liberty, I mean, it's a great train. And, you know, I know why Amtrak needs it is because with Bombardier and their Acellas, in order to get these fixed, in order to get them through, the contract that they had with Bombardier just, you know, fizzled into the void. So it didn't do so well, and they can't really get those trains fixed up, and they have a whole lot of problems because they're really proprietary trains. With Alstom's Avalia, they're using parts that are mostly, I would say, I think like mostly European parts, and 90% of it is like from already the trains that they already have, and that's an Avalia platform that's already a universal platform that they're using. It's a lot easier to fix, and Alstom already has, you know, parts available in order to do that if something goes wrong. So I understand that portion. However, the Avalia is not going to go that much faster than the Acela, and it's not going to be it's not going to be cutting, like, you know, hours away from the trip or anything like that. It's maybe going to cut about 5 minutes, if anything, because it accelerates a little bit faster. And it's going to look nicer. Yeah, it's going to look nicer on the inside, and you're going to have, you know, food on the inside, and it's going to be a much more comfortable ride. However, the big investment that is needed in Northeast Corridor is fixing the tracks and fixing up the infrastructure that is so desperately needed, and it's literally 100 years old. I mean, would anybody go in a 100-year-old car that's, you know, not a nicely, you know, kept 100-year-old car? It's not something that's been kept in mint condition and in a garage with a battery charger in it or anything like that, and waxed up and, you know, parts, genuine OEM parts put into it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a rickety old 100-year-old Tin Lizzie that's falling apart at the seams is the Northeast Corridor. So, I mean, you can dress it all up in as much satin and gold as it is. It's still falling apart. So that's the problem. And, you know, in that sense, the Avalia is not going to be going at its, you know, at its utmost potential. It's going to be a little bit wasted. No, really wasted in the Northeast Corridor. But I mean, at least there, it does give a better image for Amtrak, and it does say to people like, wow, look at that new train, and, you know, gives people a little bit more of a marketing sense to let them know that, hey, we have high-speed rail here in the United States, or a high-speed train. Maybe you want to help in getting more support and advocate for getting more funding, or from your state, or if you're a private investor, to invest into this. So that's something that it will do. Okay, guys, I'm going to cut it off right here. I'm sorry if I did not answer any of your questions. However, we are going to cut this off right here. If you guys have any more questions in the comments, I will try to get back in the comments and see if I can answer them and type down something. But I thank you guys for coming over here. And also, too, if you're not yet subscribed to the High Speed Rail America Club, do subscribe, because we are going to be doing a lot more videos now. We're going to be at least giving out now once a week for sure. That's now set, since I already have a job. That's not you know, complete crazy schedules or anything like that part-time. It's an actual real job that's, you know, from a set schedule. Of course, it may go on later at night. It's not exactly 9 to 5. It may go 9 to 6. But at least I have the weekends free and I have the nights free. So that's a good thing. And I do have a couple of videos on the pipeline. One concerning, I'll let you know right now, it's one concerning Walt Disney. and rail and American, American exceptionalism and dreaming big as possible. So that's something that we're going to do. That's a little bit more off topic, but it's something that's very important to talk about. And I believe the next video after that is another Japan video, and then we're talking about safety. So that's going to be great. We'll see you guys next time, and hopefully soon. And like I said, it's going to be a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day. And we'll leave it like that to go into the next video. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you, and have a great night. And enjoy the Super Bowl, which I know the Patriots are going to win. It's not any of our call, but that's what's going to happen. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. I hate both teams. But the Patriots are going to win, and I'd rather the Eagles lose because they're our rivals anyway. So that's what's going to happen. Could you make a heads-up video before your live stream? Yes, we'll start doing that, and we'll give out more of a schedule. I think on YouTube you have look, a little bulletin post that you can do. So that's something that we will do. If you're not part of the Facebook group, also do join us on Facebook, which I will put the link right here in the description if you're still on. There you go, if you want to join in to the Facebook group, and we're going to put out more updates there. Not really too much of a Twitter fan, but we'll probably start doing some more Twitter also too as well. Thank you guys for coming in. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll enjoy the Patriots win again and get another ring for Tom Brady and